All right. So good morning. I'm Kevin Sato, and I'm the program scientist for exploration for Biological and Physical Sciences Division. We have been conducting research in these areas for many, many years in low Earth orbit on on the Space Shuttle and International Space Station, but we've always been looking up in the sky to kind of understand and wonder what it's like out in deep space and also on the lunar surface of the moon and in cislunar orbit to understand biological systems and physical systems and what they do outside. So really what we are learning, where you have all been in the past and currently are studying the moon and the area around the moon, we're just beginning. And so we're really going to be looking to all of you to help us to understand the knowledge gaps that we have in order to conduct our research in that area to help advance human exploration and colonization. So the Biological and Physical Sciences Division is made up of essentially three programs, or two programs and a project. The Space Biology program, where we use model systems of organisms and physiological systems that are models of human health and disease to understand how biology changes and adapts and acclimates to this new environment. Our physical sciences program is actually broken into two different programs. First is the physical sciences, which studies physical processes such as combustion, materials, and other things in these systems, as well as fundamental physics, not astrophysics, but fundamental physics, especially around the areas of quantum physics. And finally, we have commercial enabled rapid space science projects. And really, this is specific to the International Space Station and to the commercial LEO developers. So it's low Earth orbit, where we are going to begin to work and hopefully bring back the idea of payload specialists who are scientists that can conduct the research on the International Space Station. We do embrace open science, and we have two open science databases, GeneLab, which we have open to everyone's use. We in fact have classes to teach high school students how to study omics, bioinformatics, computational analysis, and that database holds all of our that data we've gained from space, and all of our data will be put in there in the future. Also, we have the Physical Sciences Informatics database that has all our informatics information, and then we have data archive and biospecimen sharing. Now, we look at the Moon, Earth, and Mars system as a continuum of science in which we can understand what goes on in low Earth orbit, translate that microgravity to understand what goes on in cislunar orbit, and then try to understand partial gravity, and eventually Mars transit to Mars, as well as on Mars itself. The big questions being, how is physical sciences, how is physiology affected through the continuum from gravity, partial gravity, Mars gravity, and how does all that play into how we are going to safely go to these different destinations? But also, we look at it to understand pure advanced scientific knowledge. What is it that we're learning? What do we not know? But also to take that data and models that we develop that will aid in catalyzing technology R&D, but also to fill knowledge gaps for R&D so that they can begin to develop applications and technologies. So for us, what does the moon hold? It holds the ability, and why we're interested in it is really for partial gravity, deep space, albedo radiation are probably the two most important things that we're looking at. But also there's unique environmental factors that we're still trying to understand and learn. The distance from Earth, outside Earth's atmosphere, as well as extreme cold environments, especially in permanently shadowed regions. So for the life sciences, I think many of the things that you can see for life sciences, physical sciences, fundamental physics are things that you're all aware of why you would go out and conduct research investigations on the moon overall. And so these are the areas that we are going to be looking at. But also, as we look at the fundamental side, we're also trying to address questions of the hazards of human spaceflight. And these are the hazards that were identified by our human research program, as well as the Human Systems Risk Board, as the key areas that we feel is going to be of of importance to understand in order to mitigate risk to human spaceflight. And many of these things include details that are both biological as well as in physical sciences. And I believe many of them are also going to be very important for what we learn from your science that you're going to be conducting on the moon in terms of regolith, dust, dusty plasma, and other things that can occur that can affect and impact both materials and also the human systems. Also, our physical sciences group is very interested in how they can contribute to understanding and working in situ lunar resource utilization. What do you need to know about soft matter, granular flow? That's going to help you to understand how to process and work with the regolith. What are the different physical processes that you need to understand in terms of fluidics, fluid physics, and other things with respect to volatiles and O2 as you go into additive manufacturing or benefaction and other things. And so we are looking at how do we provide the different models for how you're actually going to be doing a lot of the work to develop and utilize the resources that are on the moon and eventually back onto Mars. So these are some highlight examples of how we are already beginning to look at lunar and Martian science, even though we've been in low Earth orbit. The first is Bioexperiment 1, which actually flew on Artemis 1. We were able to replace the mass models that they had with biological sciences. It was seeds as well as microbiology to look at radiation, as well as algae to look at how plants grow and do well. But also we have a commercial lunar payload science that is being sponsored by SEO on CP22, which is called Leia, and it's looking at yeast and radiation effects on the yeast, but also trying to understand how growth and other genetics are affected. But they also carry tardigrade genes to understand whether those genes can protect against stress responses. Also, we've done a lot of work on the ISS to understand partial gravity effects related to both rodents. We recently had an experiment called MHU-1, which was in collaboration with JAXA using their rodent or mouse centrifuge system to look at partial gravity and Martian gravity. And also the European Cultivation Modular System collaborating with ESA, looking at plant growth and how they're affected by partial growth. Because one thing we do not clearly understand is, does biology respond to discrete levels of gravity changes, or do they respond through the continuum or to one? The big question being, can artificial gravity be actually used to protect astronauts during long duration trips before they step off onto another world of less gravity? In terms of the payloads, this is something I want you all to take a look at and think about, is Leia. This is based on BioSentinel, which flew on Artemis SLS, Artemis 1. And it was a secondary payload. And this was sponsored by the Advanced Exploration Systems, or ESDMD, and it was a success. Biologically, we did not return things because of the duration of time that it was on and held for, but from an engineering perspective, this used all commercial available items, and so it survived. All the engineering processes, the activation steps all worked. And this was going into heliocentric orbit. But the interesting thing about this is it's a 4U sat, small sat, that we loaded with biological sciences in different fluidics cards. But it's a box and it has a bus, and you could put anything into this box to conduct science that you may want to do. And we are translating from BioSentinel into Leia, which is being used to go to the surface of the moon and onto Gateway, and will be used to integrate into different systems. And this is the hardware they're going to be using for the CP22 experiment. So it could be something that you all might be interested in using for instruments as well, where you use that bus. And finally, for our physical sciences area, they're conducting a lot of different areas that are going to be important. Zero boil-off tank, which is really looking at computational fluidic dynamic models to understand cryogenic fluid flow behavior, as well as if you're going to refuel in space, how are you going to do that? Also, they have studies in drop towers where it appears that you do have changes in flammabilities of materials. at partial gravity, where one material at microgravity may be non-flammable. You put it at partial gravity, and for some reason, it becomes flammable. So they're developing a lot of those different models, as well as concrete, soft matter, granular. They're really interested in understanding regular thin and also how it compresses and changes and flows, and helping with understanding the geology on the moon. So with that, I'd like to thank you, and I'll be available for questions later. I'd like to now introduce Jamie Favors. He is the program executive for heliophysics and the deputy director for space weather.